All right. Are you ready? I think we're live. I am so excited to see you. I'll introduce you in a second. But hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Benitez. Welcome. I'm the founder of Lindsay B Coaching and a certified coach and speaker with a mission to empower confident and authentic leaders to redefine what success means to them and actively design their dream careers and lives. In this LinkedIn Live series that I do once a month, I'm bringing fellow founders, first generation trailblazers, and incredible leaders who have inspired me throughout my journey that I know will inspire you. I am so excited to introduce Brandon Benitez, my guest today. Before I introduce you formally and read your bio, how are you feeling today? And I think I said this to you already, but I don't
Yes.
allow good, fine, or busy because everyone says that. I really want to know how you're feeling.
Well, first off, very blessed to be in the situation that I'm in each and every day. I'm fired up, honestly, to join you, get to talk about this. It's been something that has been so important to both you and I. This topic that we're going to discuss today, and so I just feel really empowered, feel really great about getting to talk about that today.
Good, good. I will tell you that I know for sure we have at least one person watching, our
Yeah.
biggest fan. I don't think
Right.
she's ever seen any of my other LinkedIn lives, by the way, but since you're here, our
Yep.
mother is watching, I believe.
I'm
We'll
glad I
find
can
out.
move the needle.
One more viewer.
Hmm.
Um, and before I read your bio, I think I said this to you too, that we have a lot of people that see you on camera, that watch my stuff, but they're always like, I don't understand. So, really quickly, para las tías que nos están viendo, hola, saludos. Yo sé que siempre nos dicen que no nos entienden lo que decimos, so ahorita le queremos decir que vamos a hablar de nuestras carreras, las cosas que hemos aprendido y les mandamos muchos saludos. Hola,
Ajá,
tías.
mil abrazos, mil besos por todos los días que tenemos, que nos están viendo ahorita, o well,
Yeah.
van a estar viéndonos.
Van a estar viendo.
Ajá.
And if you didn't understand that, like Bad Bunny said, you have 4 months to learn Spanish. So
Yeah.
there you go. Alrighty, to introduce you officially. So, after graduating from Cal State University Northridge in 2018, Brandon began his television career behind the camera as a production assistant for KCAL Sports, where he learned the fast paced world of sports broadcasting from the ground up. Driven by a passion for storytelling and connecting with audiences, Brandon transitioned to his first on air role in Chico, California. In 2019, there he covered high school and collegiate sports, honing his reporting skills and on camera presence. His journey then took him to South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley, a completely new landscape, both professionally and culturally, which I definitely want to talk about, where he expanded his coverage to include professional basketball and baseball teams in nearby markets like San Antonio and Houston. And after 3 successful years in Texas, Brandon thankfully returned home to California to join CBS Sacramento, where he currently covers major sports across the NBA, NFL, and Division One collegiate levels. Brandon's path from production assistant to on air reporter in major markets is a testament to following your passion, embracing growth, and building a career on your own terms. But most importantly, his favorite title is being my little brother, right?
Yeah, that above all else, when it's on my tombstone, it'll say little brother on there. So love that.
I am the proud big sister of Brandon. So thank you for joining me. I think this one's really special. I shared with you that since I started this series, I had this idea to connect with you, to share your story, because your story is so unique. And anytime I share very proudly that my brother is a sports anchor, people are like, wait, like on TV?
Mhm.
Yeah, on TV. But I'm super curious to kick us off. I know we've always loved sports. Like growing up, we were big Laker fans, Dodger
Mhm.
fans, go Dodgers. But what really sparked your love for sports and storytelling? What really, like, was there a moment where you realized this could be a career? Because we don't have anybody in our family that has done anything close to this. So just curious if there was that moment or what sparked it for you.
Yeah, I think for me, it was like you mentioned, we had sports had just been a big part of my life growing up. I grew up playing soccer, and I always loved the idea of, or just like the sense of community that there is, teamwork, right? sacrificing so that way, you can build up another person, vice versa, because they're doing it for you. So sports always drew out to me like that. I always knew I wanted to be involved in it. When I first started, though, I didn't really know I wanted to be in the realm of broadcasting or on camera nonetheless until college, to be honest. And so
Okay.
like I left high school. I knew I wanted to be in the world of sports. Didn't really know exactly how I wanted it to be. So I started off in the marketing route. We give that a shot. My freshman year of college, I realized, I'm not really into this side of sports, but I still want to be involved. And for me, it was just I always had dreams of being involved in a broadcasting sense, but just like it really didn't, I would say, organize itself until I got to college. I was able to take communications classes. I found myself being a good writer, good speaker.
Mhm.
Um, and those were really the formative years. It wasn't until I got to CSUN that I really had the full on headline of like, okay, this is exactly the career that I want to be in. And if it wasn't for the professors there, my peers that helped me along the way in instilling confidence and that knowing that I could do something in that realm, it's really what sparked it. And I always naturally found myself in my friend groups growing up of being the informer, right? Like, oh, did you see what Kobe did last night? Oh, did you see what Chelsea FC, what Barcelona, what Real Madrid did, Manchester United, right? Like, I always found myself being in that space of being the stat reader, right? Like that was the way
Mhm.
I digested math, right? Like math wasn't my thing unless it was in that form of stats, right? You player analysis and all that stuff. So I feel like the structure was always there. I just didn't really have the belief in it until I got to college, and I
Mm.
think that's really when everything came into fruition there.
Yeah. I mean, I will say the volume of knowledge you have about like all sports is always shocking. I know that if I ever have questions or if my friends have questions for anything sports related, I'm like, oh, let me call the sports dude. Like there's always some stats, piece of information you have. So that I can attest to is brilliance.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, You've covered a ton of really cool things, but I'm curious, what has been your favorite moment? And I mean, you're still early-ish enough in your career where there's a lot more to do, but you've seen a lot. So, what has been your favorite journey or favorite story so far?
Yeah, I'm approaching 6 years now in the business, at least of being on camera.
6 years? Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess that
six
makes sense. That's
years. Yeah,
crazy.
2019 was my first job in Chico, and so 6 years. I want to say for me, the the best moments that I had in my short career so far in this business, even though it's starting to build up a nice sample size, is covering the World Series. It was Houston Astros against the Philadelphia Phillies. They met up in the World Series. This was in 2021, I believe, and so 2021, 2022, and the just being in that environment, right? Having to travel to Houston. Now, mind you, going from McAllen, where I was living at, to Houston, it's a 5 hour drive. But in Texas, that's really nothing, right? Like that's normal for people to make long trips like that, no problem. And so getting to go to Houston for multiple games throughout the World Series. It was throughout that playoff run actually in Houston that I really started getting familiar with, other people at bigger stations and really
Mhm.
being on the field at Minute Maid Park. In fact, that's what it was called back then, and has a different name now, under the bright lights, and that was really a "Mama, I've made it" type of moment. You know what I mean? And for
Yeah.
me, getting to cover that run, I think was so special. Not just because they won it, and that was the whole reason why we were there. Was for the Astros. It's a big community down there in the RGV that supports baseball, especially the Astros baseball. And for me, the reason why that moment stuck out is it was perhaps one of the first times that I was on an even playing field with the ESPNs, with the
Mm.
MLB networks, with
Mhm.
the main stations in Houston, in Philadelphia that were visiting in town. These are big markets, right? Like Houston's a top 10 market. And at that time, the Rio Grande Valley, the region that I was covering, it's like ranked 85th out of
Yeah.
210 total TV markets. And
Right.
so to put it into perspective, like that was I would be walking down first base line, going to my spot to set up for this
I'm
for
not
this live
crying. I
shot.
think my allergies are hitting, Brandon.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's yeah, that happens with us from time to time. And so so getting to be in that environment, I think was special. I looked back on it, and when I was being surrounded by my peers and seeing people that I was maybe a couple of years ago, I was watching loosely, but I had no TV experience, and so
Right.
for me to have climbed up, so to speak, 5 years later, and I walked past what some other people are doing, and it's just like I'm about to do that right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what they're doing is not anything more special than what I'm about to do. It's on me to kill it with this live shot coming up.
Yeah.
We all have the same backdrop, we all have the same videos, same interviews. Now it's just about what's in my control, and being able to cover that event. That was really just the tip of the iceberg. There's been a bunch of other events along the way since then, that I've been really grateful to have covered. But that was, I think, where it started. Getting to
Yeah.
cover the World Series, the biggest stage of baseball that there possibly is, and that right there, I think, gave me so much juice, so much energy to really felt like I had a sense of belonging,
Mm.
amongst other
I
people.
I love that. And I have a little bit of a side question for you. One thing I will say is that we were so proud, even if it was the Astros.
Yes.
But we were
Yes.
so proud of you because it's like that is what you dream of to get to cover. But I love something that you said that I want to kind of highlight right now of yes, this is your first time covering the World Series, the biggest stage you have had. At that point, you were covering a lot of like high school, college, like this is really out of the element. But you could have easily fallen into the two words I hate the most, imposter syndrome. And you
Mhm.
could have easily been like, do I belong here? Is this the right place? Like, who am I? What kind of pushed you in that moment to say, like, we're all here, we're all doing the same thing, we're all covering? Like, was there something you told yourself? Was there something that you felt to kind of quiet that annoying imposter syndrome that we hear so much about?
Yeah, for me, I think it was looking at the work that other people were doing, and realizing it's kind of like a boogeyman. The barrier between where I thought I was and where I thought those people were.
Hmm.
And it wasn't up until I was face to face and hearing them. Literally, I mean, we're talking about dozens of different reporters lined up in a row, and here I am at the way end, of the third base or first base line, right? And so I'm walking on my way, so I'm hearing everything that everybody is saying, and that was, I think, where everything clicked for me. It was the idea that I may be in a smaller market, but that does not mean that what the coverage that I'm doing is smaller in any way. That's
Oof.
compared to
Yeah,
what these other reporters and anchors were doing. And
I
so
love
for
that.
me, that was a big turning point. I think a lot of those similar moments of leading up until that point, all my coverage, all my coverage history, if you will, was all circled around high school sports and
Hmm.
Division II level college. Um, when I got to the Rio Grande Valley, that's when it got bumped up to Division I. The local college that's there. Uh, but what I felt like, you mentioned imposter syndrome. Uh, Perhaps a little bit of that, but I would say more so it was just a matter of, like, I just felt like the things that I was doing, even though it's part of my job, and I still do it to the best of my abilities, exactly of whether it was the World Series or whether it was a high school baseball game on a random Friday night. I'll always treat it the same. But there was the admission of, like, okay, this literally is not big league baseball, and
Mm.
we're it's just, it felt different, it felt smaller, within reason, of course. I will say some of the best stories I've ever done had nothing to do with pro sports. They were
Yeah.
all at local level, and things that were happening that people on ESPN, on Fox, would have never been able to see had I not told that story in our small TV station. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that was I would probably say what clicked it is just looking at what other people were doing, and realizing that it wasn't bigger than where I was at.
I love that. And just in case anybody out there still uses those two words, imposter syndrome, I want to give you a quick kind of spiel that I share with everybody anytime I hear those words. Because one, that is kind of saying that you feel that you are less than or that you
Mhm.
don't belong in that room. And that's not true. Anytime you have those feelings or start to think that you want to label it imposter syndrome, it's one of three things. One is imposter phenomenon is real. A lot of us grew up not seeing people like us in
Mhm.
certain rooms. There's a reality that we weren't allowed in certain rooms back in the day, right? So that's real. I get that question a lot. Why doesn't leadership look more like, the population? Well, we're
Yeah.
not there yet. So how do we create more of that visibility? So that's why like visibility is huge. The second thing, if you're feeling imposter syndrome, is there might be a little bit of a fear, fear of being seen, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being told that you're not good enough. Like all those fears are real. So check in. Is there a fear? And what do you need to do to understand it, move through it, and so on? And the third thing is that there's usually a skill or experience you haven't yet had, which for you, that's what it sounds like. Like just because this was your first time doing it doesn't mean that you aren't capable or have the skills. And now, hopefully, you'll get to cover another World Series very soon,
Yeah.
but that's where you just gain that experience. And if you're getting ready to present to a client and you're feeling that imposter syndrome, what do you need to do to get ready for that presentation, right? What's one
Yeah.
thing that you can do to move forward, because you don't have that experience yet, but you will.
Mhm.
So I just want to, that's my
Yeah.
little imposter syndrome commercial, because
Yeah.
I hate those
Absolutely.
words.
Yeah. No. Adding to that, it felt like also looking back on that time that I just felt a little unproven. So it's
Mhm.
like I don't know what I don't know. Like I don't know
Yeah.
exactly, what it's like being here. So there was everything was new about that space, right? New facility. I didn't even know where the bathroom was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know like where the media room was. And here I go. I got
Yeah.
a live shot in 15 minutes. I gotta, know about everything, make sure I have my credential, all the logistics of it, going behind it. So yeah, it was just easily one of the highlights of my career, in terms of an unlocking to a new tier of belief, in my
I love
opinion.
that. Very cool. I want to bring us a little pivot personally, because
Mhm.
I said this in the beginning, but you're not a kind of generational sports anchor. This is the
Yeah.
first one in the family to do anything similar. And I will say before, and it's funny because people always say like, "Oh, Lindsay, you're so brave for pursuing your business," and I'm like, the first brave one was my brother,
Mhm.
honestly, because you taught me that pursuing passion is possible. And
Mhm.
I know that there was a lot of moments where, I mean, we both grew up similarly. I'm much older, but we had this definition of success, right? That like our parents constantly told us, be a lawyer, be a doctor. Like there's a vision of
Yeah.
what success looks like. So I'm curious for you, like when did you realize that your version and vision of success was very different? And, how did you give yourself permission to pursue that passion? Um, this is not an easy industry. We have zero connections, right? So, like, how
Yeah.
did you give yourself permission to pursue and create this vision of success for yourself?
I've always been a romantic in the sense of like dreaming bigger and chasing after what makes you happy and stuff like that. I have some movies to thank for that, right? I think of like the Will Smith Pursuit of Happiness to, I
Yeah.
see I enjoy seeing other examples of people that had no connections, no anything, hearing their stories and finding a way to relate that and make me feel like I can, if they can do it, I can too, right? I
Mm,
have our parents to thank for that, right? Like I draw inspiration from so many different areas that I feel like I was able to piece all that together to give me enough motivation to really step out and go out on a limb, right? Like yes,
mm,
maybe I was the first one to step into this space, right? But like once upon a time, I know somebody who was a business law major and pivoted into something because they weren't feeling that, and that was supposedly the big job, the big dream, I think, for years prior to that. And
yeah.
so just watching somebody be able to pivot to something else, even in the college space, right? Like, so I go back to when I was in college, and like I felt like I was good enough for a camera. Good enough, just barely good enough to be on camera.
I love it.
Be engaging, be energetic. I always feel like those things have come naturally to me. Being a bit extrovert, like wanting to meet new people, talking with people. I always felt like even before I stepped in front of a microphone, like I can talk about, or I can have a conversation with anybody about anything, whatever it is that they like. And you always hear things about the best way to build yourself, or you build connections, and to build friends and this and that, is to take interest in what other people do and say, right? And so I use all these things to bring me back into this realm. And it wasn't always easy. Obviously we can get into the difficulties of choosing the life that I have chosen, but
Yes.
for me, it was just a matter of, life is short. The people that I have drawn inspiration from were able to make something of their lives too. Let me do that while also making sure I prioritize my happiness, the things that are going to fulfill my cup, and just being fearless. I think that's a big trait that you need to have whenever you step into something that has never been done before, historically in your family. And it's not every day, right? I'm sure there's plenty of other families that have somebody that has trailblazed in that sense. And so I feel like I've been able to round all that up together and be my why, as to why I'm choosing to go stick my neck out into the space, and just go for it all.
I love that. You did have family who love us and, want the best for us. Maybe tell you that you're being a little crazy, a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
How did you kind of move past this external story, right? Because that's a hard one. Like when your own family is telling you, have a backup plan. And I feel like I probably did too. Just be smart about it. But go for it, right? If you have that feeling and dream, go for it. But like, how did you continue to just listen to yourself and make sure that you did have that fearlessness? Because easier said than done to move forward with fearlessness, right? But what kept you going, or what keeps you going?
Yeah. So the caveat is that I know that these people mean well, right? And that's okay, because the reality is, and I think you and I have talked about this previously within the past couple of years, it's just that there are people out there that want to play it safe because they feel like they've had to just survive life.
Yeah.
And therefore, and so no shade at all. No shade at all in that realm. At the time when I was hearing the voices of, why don't you just go into construction, or like something in a much different realm that I never even had any experience in, regardless. I was like, so I'm gonna leave something that I enjoy doing, have fun doing it, it's my passion, just so I can venture off into something that's not my passion, but also still a realm that like not many other people really know too much about. And so for me, it was just like, what kept me going was the idea of that, like the saying, I've come so far, or I forget, I'm kind of blanking on how to say it, but it's just like I didn't come this far just to come this far.
Come this far.
You know what
Yeah,
I
I
mean?
love
Like,
that one. Yeah.
I moved to Chico, right? I'm here living above a garage for for $27,000 a year. I'm not just about to give up and do what? You know what I mean? Like there's the idea of, again, I hear so many different stories of people that stuck with it even when everything else was falling around them, right? And even in Chico, I was unemployed. COVID, took away my job for about 6 months, out of the year, the back half of 20, kind of going in between 2020 and 2021. And so there was a lot of moments that stressed me out, that tested my will to do this for sure. But looking back on it, I feel like those are things that needed to happen, because there are, and especially in this line of work, there's only so few jobs about it, or about like in this industry, that you were bound to run into some trials and tribulations like that. And so this is going to be the resiliency is what needs to come through now. And you stick with it for a little while longer. Next thing you know, bam, right? Something hits.
Yeah.
You take the leap. You move to Texas, even further away from home than I already had. But you do that because you have the ultimate belief in yourself that you can do it. And like I mentioned, 6 months later, from that lowest point in Chico is when I was covering the World Series, right? Like it was, or it was when I was, it was when I was doing, all these things that, I was like, man, like just a year ago, like I could have easily given up. Thank God I didn't. And I think that those moments are able to fuel me for the rest of my life.
I love that. Do you have a hard stop at 30 minutes? Because I'm going to keep going if you're down to keep going.
Keep going. Yeah, no, keep going.
For anyone watching besides Mom, can you throw in any questions you have or comments in the comment section, and we can see them. Happy to share. And thank you for sharing that, Brandon. I think one thing that, I hear this a lot, especially from certain clients or folks, like, I have this vision, I have this dream, but everyone else around me is telling me I should give up, be realistic, all these things, right? And I always say one of two things. One, you have a knowing. If there's something that you're envisioning, you have a knowing. You have to listen to it if you choose to listen to it, right? And two, people will give us advice based on what they're willing to do or what they, to your point, have seen, right? And I think especially for a lot of us who are first generation, there's a lot of these feelings of guilt and a little fear, of course, but how do I go after these, dream jobs and not feel guilty, right? Because a lot of our parents and a lot of generations that came before us were in survival mode, right? So all they knew was find the steady job. That's why so many people are told be doctors, lawyers, engineers, because it's steady income, supposedly, right? So pursuing passion and dreaming the bigger dreams and careers is just not a thing for previous generations. But I think for us, first gen, like, we have a unique opportunity to create and design and really elevate those dreams and show what's possible in that visibility. So I always like to share that, like, yes, just because you are the first doesn't mean, or just, you're not crazy just because you're the first, right? You're just the first to do it, and then bring others along with you, show that visibility of what's possible.
Absolutely.
So I love that. The other thing, and I'm curious to hear what you think, because I had a friend recently ask me this, like, what keeps you going? And I'm like, for me, it's curiosity. Like, I don't know anyone else in the family that's done what I'm doing either. Now I'm curious to see what's possible. And I think for you too, like, I'm super curious to see what you're going to do.
Yeah. It speaks to ambition. It speaks to drive, right? Like all these things that, have come naturally, even outside of the space. Now you're just redirecting all of that into an area that's really unknown, but all the more rewarding at the same time.
Yeah. We have a question. You did share, one of your favorite stories, of course, was covering the World Series when the Astros went. But can you share another personal favorite story that you reported on, and why?
Yeah. Honestly, one of the best stories I think that I've ever had the pleasure to tell just happened recently. Shout out Corey Pereira. He's a Cameron Park native. It's a town that's within the viewing area of Sacramento. He's a professional golfer. When I met him, it was because for CBS 13 in Sacramento, whenever we have like a golf tournament that's on our channel, we'll host like a 30-minute post-game special, if you will, where we invite a golf analyst on and we talk about the events that happened today, how Tiger Woods did, right? Like, what'd you think about the shot on hole 8? You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. Easily one of the cooler things that we get to do. And it's not just golf. We do it for a bunch of different sports. Um, and so I met Corey. Here's this guy who is just the most positive, the warmest human being that I've known in a while. And his wife, Leah Bertuccelli, unfortunately, had to deal with sarcoma cancer, and it was a battle that she lost tragically, just a couple months ago. And she's been battling this for a while. And Corey had taken a break from golf, put his own dreams on hold to help take care of his wife.
Oh,
Um, and so it's an emotional story, obviously, but since her passing, he's gone back into golf, and now he's kind of fueled by her presence, and so it's those kinds of stories like that you don't really get to see and hear every day, and so I loved getting to travel to Napa, where there's a golf course, and he was competing in his very first tournament since her passing, and it's just the journey that he's gone that he's gone through. It was something that I try very carefully and to the best of my abilities to tell, and I'm grateful that he was able to be so open with me about it. To this day, I think that's one of the better stories that I've ever put together. I have it on my Instagram. I'll find a way to link it. I'll put it on LinkedIn, or you name it and stuff. And so
yeah.
I would say there's a couple of those stories out there, right? Like, I remember when I was in the RGV also, like there was a softball coach who was almost on his deathbed, like randomly got sick one day, and tragically, or miraculously, I should say, recovered enough time to make it back to his softball team's like biggest game of the season. And they were down, right? Final 2-3 outs of their softball game. And they see him, motivated by him, they go on to win, right? And so it was just like, there's so many of these different kinds of stories, right? Like even on the lighter side, like I remember when I was in Chico, there was a high school football player who was just in the smallest town ever, never getting any looks, but here's this 6'4", built like a lineman type of guy, and he's a running back, not getting any looks. And because I do a story on him being a 4.0 student athlete, while also just being ridiculous on the football field, got a scholarship out of it. Right? He told me afterwards.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, he told me afterwards. He's like, "Hey, I had this Division II coach from like Iowa, like randomly reach out, and this was always my dream to just keep playing football in college. Like it didn't matter where I moved to." But he said that he saw my story somehow, like on through Facebook.
That's so
And
cool.
so it's like those are the more rewarding stories that I think that will always be burned in my memory. No matter how high up I climb, because I think those are the stories that really mattered in whatever local community you live in, or you want to know about those kinds of things.
I love that. And I will say, like, yes, the dream is to sit at a table with LeBron like you did and, cover all these big sports. But I can attest to always seeing you light up when you can share visibility of, these high school folks, these college folks, especially like the stories behind the greatness that we see. So I think that's really a gift that you have around storytelling and bringing visibility to others. I think those are my favorite stories. Of course, I'm always rooting for you when I see you at the Niners game and so on.
Yeah,
but the stories where the scholarship is amazing. You can change someone's life with a really great story.
Yeah,
I love that. Okay. I do want to start to think about our last couple questions. Mm-hmm. So let's see. I want to go back to one question that I know we've talked a lot about as well, just personally, of, this idea of guilt of, you have a career where you aren't home, you are moving, you've been away for a while, and that's obviously by design of how you need to climb the markets.
Yeah.
But I don't want to obviously like put words in your mouth, but like, what do you think about this idea that a lot of first gen folks do have guilt, especially Latinos? Like, we're very collectivist of like, we got to be near family, and no one ever really moves away from family. So I'm just curious, like, how do you reframe that? How do you reframe that guilt? How do you reframe like why it's important for you to continue to pursue this for yourself and for all of us.
It's for sure a battle that I can't confidently say I've overcome, just because I'm still so early in my career, and I don't know where it's going to take me, but I've obviously been gone from home. And yeah, there is something to be said about about the guilt and missing out on life events, right? Like when the few times a year that I'll get to come home, it's grown more, thankfully, being in Sacramento, being in the same state, it's easier access to flights, to and from LA. But yeah, the guilt thing is for sure, one thing that is still a work in progress, obviously. The idea is that, I'll make it up on the back end, so to speak, right? Like, I the things that I want to do in this career are not just so that way I can, help myself, but it's to help everybody around me. And, and there comes it's been an absolute, trade-off, no doubt, right? Like every time you come home, seeing people with grayer hair than the last time you'd seen them, looking different, right? Looking a little older.
Wait, what are you talking about? My gray hair?
Yeah.
Call me out like that.
They're there somewhere, I bet. But so that's a work in progress. It is difficult. It's difficult to say that I have all the answers, hammered out, ironed out already, where now I can just, be free in that sense. I would say this though, is that at the end of the day, everything that you do is a trade-off. The comfortability of staying home and picking a different job, it was conflicting in that sense, because it was like, all right, in order to pursue my passion, I know that I can't do it living within the confines of one city, especially one big market where you're dealing with people that have 20, 30, 40, 50 years of experience. Right. And so it's the notion of like, okay, if I'm going to invest in this, there are going to be some trade-offs. It's why, this life, as blessed and as glamorous as it may look, when you look on the confines of a TV, right, getting to cover a 49ers game or anything like that, everything is going to have a drawback. And so for me, it was more so about what about the blessings that life can give you along that way, right? Like I met my girlfriend in Rio Grande Valley, and she's here, right? Like she's living with me.
Hi.
She's somewhere, here in the apartment. And so, right, like I think about these things, and I realize none of these things would have ever happened also if had I stayed, had I done what's best. And even after Chico, I was like, okay, I only want to be in California, even if it's a smaller market within the state, right? Like that's just, it's limiting yourself a little in a way. And so in order to go all in, you have to be willing to really push all your chips to the front of the table and kind of go at life with the tenacity, with a will to accept the journey that's coming along the way. Right. The goal is to move back to Los Angeles. And I really do feel like I'm on the doorstep. I'm in the driveway. I'm at least in the driveway of getting to that goal. And so for me, like, we go back to the idea of like, I've been able to come this far. Life has really zoomed by fast in that aspect. It felt like yesterday I was still, being a production assistant at KCAL.
Yeah.
And so these things are, they're trade-offs, but I feel like, learning to let life come to you in that sense too has a lot of benefit in it of itself also. So,
I love that. And I want to double down on that, because a lot of times, and I've heard this for myself, I don't know if you've heard this, but I've heard this about you as well, both of us. Like, oh, you guys are so lucky. Like, Brandon's so lucky that he's reporting. You're so lucky that you're pursuing your passion and kind of doing this business. And I'm like, I personally don't fully believe in luck, because it is opportunity and intention, and having these moments of like, yes, how do I move from the shoulds to the wants and the trust? And one thing I tell myself a lot is like, trust the process. If I get an opportunity, great. If I don't get the opportunity, great, not meant for me yet. And you had a lot of those moments too. I want to say that, and I'm gonna double down on like, we're not gonna get into your full story here because we are over time, but it doesn't matter because we can do whatever we want. It's my LinkedIn Live.
Yeah.
But
You run
it,
this.
it was, I run this. It was hard. Like there
Yeah.
were moments where it's like there was a gap between markets for you,
Mhm.
moving away to a new city where not a soul is all those moments are hard. But one thing that I think, and I just shared this with you, like I had this realization that you keep moving to places that you are meant for those experiences,
Mhm.
and there has to be a trust and a belief. Like if this opportunity is knocking, you have to take it and you have
Yeah.
to lean into it, right? You could have easily said no, or I'm not going to move anymore, or I'm not going to go to Texas, whatever it might be. But the stories you got to cover, the World Series you got to cover, you did a full report in Spanish, like all of this was just amazing opportunities that were meant for you. And now you got to go to Sacramento. There was, again, multiple interviews in between. You could have gone to all sorts of cities in between
Yeah.
Texas and Sacramento. But I know that being closer to family was also very important. So when this happened, it was like, wow, alignment and all the cool things like that are
Yeah.
happening and are going to happen. So I'm
Yeah.
curious for you, like, what do you think about luck and this idea when people tell you, like, you're so lucky, Brandon?
Yeah, well, the thing about luck though is that I might be a little bit of a believer in luck, but only from the aspect of, and maybe it's actually not even luck, but I just feel like those that are able to take the biggest leaps can naturally bring some good energy back to them in that sense. Being open-minded is something that people, all over the world should have instilled in them, right? Is the idea of, of moving to another place, or at least just, seeing what it's like out there. The beauty about life is that you can start over tomorrow if you wanted to, right? Like you have infinite chances to, to choose your own life path. But, it's if you're willing to take the leaps, the biggest rewards can come your way. And
Yeah.
um, I feel like for me, I could have gone anywhere after Chico. Could have been,
Mhm.
I mean, I was applying to places in Iowa, in Kentucky, in you name it. Texas came knocking, and lo and behold, that was a really meaningful place to move to for a bunch of
Mhm.
different reasons, right? We talked about the career, everything outside of the career as well that that came my way. And so for me, it was like all of these things wouldn't have happened had I not taken that leap. And if there's one thing that I want people to come away with from this, is that leaps are necessary. You got to be able to bet on yourself, because at the end of the day, you are your biggest advocate, number one, but
Mhm.
B, it's your life. Like you only have one of these. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you never know exactly how the next 20 years can go by. But it's much better to live with, it wound up not working out, rather than saying, oh, I wish I should have at least tried to
Yeah.
see what could have come from it. But now we'll
Yeah.
never know, and this and that, this and that.
I hear that. And one thing I love to talk about too is like, there's this awesome book called Design Your Life that is super inspirational for me. And there's a TED talk to it if you don't want to read it. But they talk a lot about like you have a default life, the things that you should do, what's around you, what's accessible, maybe what's a little easier to do.
Mhm.
And then your designed life. Like what are the things that scare you, but you're going after, not the
Yeah.
shoulds, like the wants.
All right.
And it's scary. And I want to acknowledge that, some folks do have limitations, do have different circumstances that it is risky to take big leaps and move and, kind of go after all these things.
Mhm.
But same thing, Brandon. I have the exact same feeling of I never want to wonder what if. I never want to wonder, what else could have happened. Obviously, we're going to be smart about it and we're going to be thoughtful around it, but you got to feel the fear. You got to move towards the fear because that means that you're getting closer to something that you're meant for and you're excited about. That
Yeah.
fear easily can be translated to excitement. So, how do we
Mhm.
make sure we're moving towards this excitement? Because you're right, we have one life and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited to
Yeah.
keep talking about designing our lives because that's my favorite. I think there's so much opportunity to move the mindset from the shoulds to
Mhm.
wants and get creative. Like if you could wave that magic wand, like what is that ideal dream life? And then figure out how to get it. Like what's one small thing you can do to move closer? Cool.
Yeah, I'm with you
All right.
100%.
All righty. We have one more question from the audience, whoever they may be. But I want to come back to, a big thing that I talk a lot about is like being first gen. Have you
Yeah.
felt any particular kind of challenge around entering this field where you don't have as many connections in the industry? You really are flying solo and kind of navigating this on your own. So how does you being a first gen reporter play into your experience?
Well, I think that there's definitely trial by fire, right? Like it's you're kind of learning things on the fly. But I will say that like growing up, no, I never had these these figures to just have right beside me, bouncing ideas off, confidence off. Like it wasn't up until that I entered into the space already that I started meeting other people, right? And
Mm,
I'm really big on, as you can tell through throughout this live, like I'm really big on drawing inspiration from other people and finding a way to reflect it onto myself. For me, it was like, okay, yes, I may have um, things that aren't setting me up for success, so to speak, but it doesn't mean that it it doesn't mean that it has to hinder me too much. I
mm,
can find ways to make connections, and I'm really grateful for the people that I've met along the way. I think of Beto Duran, who's on ESPN radio in LA. He does all kinds of different things, right? Like there's people in this market that I've met, William Bonilla at Telemundo. Like there are and all fellow Salvadoreño, right? Like he's
nice.
another guy that like has been doing this job at a high level for a long time. And so there are people that have helped me along the way now, which I'm really grateful for because I still feel young in this industry.
Yeah.
But in terms of being first gen, like yeah, I want to say that the biggest hurdle is I feel like I kind of was able to overcome already. It feels like the hardest part is past me now, of just knowing when to not listen to other people and
Mm,
listen to and also kind of using the good examples, right? Like we mentioned our parents, right? Like I know that you know the things that they had to go through just to even get to the US are things that self motivate me, because for me it's like, man, like they were able to make something of their lives out here. How could I not? Right?
mm,
Like I'm in a much better position in my life than the people before me, which I'm grateful for
mhm,
them for. And
mhm,
for me it's also now about starting to set that up for the next generation as well, right?
yeah.
Like finding other people that have been in similar shoes as I have, other first gen reporters, um Latino or not, right? Like finding those
Mm,
people and helping their be for them what I didn't have until I got into the industry already.
I
You know
love
what I
that.
mean? So for me, that's kind of where my mindset lives, and you know, in with the tools that I've been given, and the foundation that's already been set.
I love that, and I think that's a great way to start to wrap, like, this idea of community, right? We may not our family is one community, but there are so many folks who are first gen, whether they're Latino, whether they're, first gen in other ways, with different races, backgrounds, first to go to college in their family. I think that's the cool part, that first gen can span so many different people.
Yeah,
But leaning on each other, leaning on community, I will tell you through my journey too, and I love that you have that as well. I don't have any other coaches or speakers in the family, but I've created my own kind of like work family, work community
yeah,
of people that are so supportive, so generous, and understand that we can all eat. Like there is no competition because you can't
yeah.
coach like me and I can't coach like you.
Mhm.
So I love those people and I love meeting those people that are so generous with their time. I'm super generous with my time because of that. I think visibility is everything.
Yeah,
So grateful for community. I think that is personally probably my biggest advice. Like lean on each other, ask questions, don't be afraid to ask for help, and we can all eat. Like we could all support each other. There's so
Yeah,
much for everyone if we
there's
choose to
there's
think that
room
way.
for yeah, there is room for multiple people to have success, right?
Yes.
Like, so it's about uplifting other people, and and just setting up the next wave of people that want to enter this space, and give them the platform and the confidence more than anything, right? I think all of this boils down to confidence. You got to believe in yourself, especially if it's something that you're passionate about. It doesn't matter if it's in sports, doesn't matter if it's in coaching, it can be in medicine, it can be in law, it can be in advertising or business, or you name it, right? Like whatever that may be, you gotta at least explore that avenue, especially nowadays. There's ways to
Yeah.
monetize anything, right? So it's not just a matter of like, oh, I only want to make something that's gonna make me rich, right? Like let the money come, but work on the craft now. Set up a good foundation, good habits, so that way you feel inclined to really push to scale exactly with where you want to go in whatever realm you're in.
I love that. Love that. How can people find you if they want to check out your stories, follow your journey, learn more about you? Where are you on all the socials?
So you can find me at Branitez Sports, Branitez Sports, on Instagram, Twitter. TikTok is on the rise currently, and so that's a lot of different factors, in the social media game, a lot of different platforms, obviously, but it's easy to find me.
Cool. Any parting words for mom or any other folks that are going to are watching live still or will watch the replay?
Hi, Ma. Love you, Ma. Thanks for watching. And and shout out to my live audience, Maya. She's in the living room as we speak. Yeah, there's definitely been a good network of people that have helped build me up to what I am today, and that just helped continue sustaining that. And so, for me, it's never it stopped at least a long time ago about proving other people wrong. Instead, proving the ones that believed in me, proving them right. And so,
Oof.
yeah, and so for me, I lean on that. I feel like I have way more supporters than I ever had haters. But like,
Well, isn't that
you
when you'll know
know,
you'll make it when you have your haters?
yeah, yeah,
Hopefully
exactly,
not.
right.
Oh
So
man.
no, so I'm grateful to be in the spot that I'm in. With the people that I'm surrounded by.
Love that. I'm proud of you, dude. Um, Thank you for joining me. Super
Mhm.
excited. Thank you for going almost an hour with me because
Hey,
clearly we have a lot to talk about.
easy. Appreciate you for having me on.
Of course. Talk to you later. Bye, everyone.